talking about ratios and proportions, so let's get through this. A ratio is just setting it up as a fraction. Basically, you're setting it up as a fraction. You can write it many different ways. At a car wash fundraiser, 18 ninth graders and 14 10th graders worked the first shift. Find the ratio of ninth graders to 10th graders. The word to helps you set it up. 2 shows you what goes first or on top, however you want to look at it. The word to.
Does that mean a fraction?
So if I were to set up this ratio, how many ninth grade students are there?
18.
18. How many 10th grade students are there?
14.
So I would set up the ratio as 18 over 14 because of the word to. The 18 goes on top. Then we have to simplify it. We have to reduce it. So what can they both be divided by?
2.
2. 9 over 7. Okay? Now, this is one way to write a ratio. Does anybody know how to write a ratio? There's other ways to write, 2 other ways. Carly?
With the colon.
Yeah, so I could say 9 to 7. There's one other way. Yep.
9, 2, 7.
Yeah. Or you could say 9 to 7. So these are the 3 different ways to write the ratio.
How would you divide it?
This is one way to write a ratio.
Yeah.
This is another way to write a ratio and another way to write a ratio. You're going to see all 3 ways. You don't actually divide it and make it a decimal. You just leave it as a 9 to 7, 9 over 7. This actually stands for the word to.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay? All right, let's do another one. Now, we're going to write a ratio of 9th grade students to all students. So how many 9th grade students are there?
18.
And then to get a total, we have to do 18 plus 14, which is 32. Oh, already? Okay, well, good luck. All right. So that's 32. Okay, so I'm going to write my ratio as 18 to 32. The 2 tells me the 18 goes on top. Got to simplify that. What can I divide them both by?
2.
Yeah, let's divide them both by 2. And then just make sure once you get this number that this can't be divided by anything else. And it can't, can it? This can only be divided by 3 and 16 can't be divided by 3. So that's one way to write it. I could also write it 9 to 16 or 9 to 7. So these are 3 ways to write the ratio.
Wait, 9 to 7.
Just seeing if you're awake. I'm worried because it's only 3rd hour and I'm already doing that. All right, yeah.
On the test, would you like all 3 or would you just like one?
You can write it either way. Anyway, it's fine. Okay? All right, now, proportions. What a proportion is it's 2 equal ratios. Even though they don't look equal, they're equal because there's an equal sign, right? Does anybody remember how to solve proportions? Yes, Megan. Yeah, you cross multiply, right? Okay, that's the confusing part. What's the difference between this and this?
It's supposed to equal.
This is a proportion. This is multiplying 2 fractions. So people get confused. When you multiply 2 fractions, you go across. When you're solving a proportion, you cross multiply. Equal sign, this is multiplying fractions. It's different, okay? So you got to cross multiply and set up the problem. You cross multiply when there's an equal between the ratios. So this is how you set it up. It doesn't matter what you put first. I'm just going to put 12 times 17, and then I put that equal sign. 12 times 17 equals h times 3. And then I have an algebra problem that I can solve for h. 12 times 17 is 204. Equals h times 3. And then how do I get h by itself? Divide by 3. And h equals 68. I'm sorry, what? Can you take a shot? Yeah, you can. Okay. All right, now this is a little bit different here. I don't know if you've done these before, but notice in the bottom here you have an expression, x minus 6, right? Very first thing you should do when you have an expression of any sort is put it in parentheses. Okay? Kyle, did you catch that? This is so important or you're never going to get the right answer. So, you have to put this in parentheses before you start anything. Okay? Have to put in parentheses. Then you can set up your cross multiply. So I have 3 times x minus 6. That's this times this. That is not the same as, don't write this down, that is not the same as this. You will get it wrong if you don't put parentheses in there. They're different.
Would it be the same if you roll 18? 3x plus 18?
It's minus 18,
I mean,
but yeah, you could do that. And then 2x. 2 times x. Now you got an algebra problem to solve. Distribute that 3. Change that to adding a negative. Plus a negative 18 equals 2x. What I saw people yesterday, how many times did I say move the variable first? Yep, a lot. People weren't doing it. People weren't doing it, and they weren't getting the right answer.
I did.
Some people did, yeah, but some people didn't, and they wouldn't get it right.
And then I forgot
Okay.
some of what you had to do with the number.
So move the variable first. I'm going to move this one because if I move that one, I'll get 0. Negative 1x. Negative 1, negative 1. X equals 18. What's the first thing you have to do on this problem? Parentheses around this expression here. Okay, solve it on your own real quick. Put parentheses, and then you can set up your cross multiply. I swear it's Tootsie Rolls. When I eat Tootsie Rolls, I can't do anything. They affect my brain. I don't have enough. Maybe I will have you guys get rid of them if I have enough. Because they're dangerous to have right behind you at your desk. All right, so did you get A equals negative 2, hopefully? To do here is you're going to have to set up proportions. And often there's more than one way to set up proportions. And usually it'll work if you do it right. So let's read this problem here. Clark? A backpacker in the Sierras hikes 5.5 miles in 2 hours. If hiking rate remains the same, how far will the backpacker hike in 7 hours? Write and solve a proportion to find the answer. So I'm comparing what to what here?
5.5.
No, let's just talk about units. What units am I comparing to what units?
That's the hours.
Okay, so I'm just going to, for now, I'm going to set up my ratio as miles to hours. If I write this down, it'll help me set up my numbers in the right spot. Okay? So, for the first one, what did they do? They did 5.5 miles in 2 hours. So I'm going to do 5.5 over 2. It says I'm going to write a proportion, so I got to put an equal sign. Do I know how long the backpackers hiked the second time? Do I know the miles? No, that's my unknown. But I know how many hours, which was 7. Do I have a proportion I can solve now? Miles to hours, miles to hours. Yes. Okay. All right. There is a different way to set this up, and I'll show you it in the next problem. Now I cross multiply. 2x equals 5.5 times 7. 2x equals 38.5. X equals 19.25, but I know you wouldn't leave your answer like that. All I did was divide by 2 here. 19.25 what?
Miles.
Miles
What do you want?
in 7 hours. Usually, if it doesn't say, round to 2 spots. That's my rule of thumb.
Okay, because I should have said round every time unless it's money.
If it doesn't say, round to 2 spots. Okay? All right. Georgia is making her own potting soil. Anybody do that? Anybody garden and all that kind of stuff? For every 4 buckets of peat moss, she mixes 3 buckets of perlite. Suppose she uses 10 buckets of peat moss. How many buckets of perlite should she use? Okay, I'm going to set this up 2 ways. I'm not doing it to confuse you, but I want you to see that there's more than one way to set up a proportion. So this is the first way. There is way too much distraction on that couch, and it's really annoying me. You're talking, and it distracts me because you're not paying attention. Okay? All right, number 1. I'm going to set this up as peat moss buckets over perlite. Okay, so for the first one, she did 4 buckets of peat moss to 3 buckets of perlite. 4 to 3. Suppose she uses 10 buckets of peat moss. How many buckets of perlite would she use? I don't know, but I can find out. So I'm going to cross multiply and solve. 4x equals 30. Divide by 4. X equals 7.5 buckets. That's the first way you can set it up. That's the way that comes to my mind, but there is another way. Or you could set it up as peat moss to peat moss. Okay, Owen, can you move over here, please? And Clark, can you go back to your seat? Blake can stay. It's his week for the couch. I'm asking you nicely. Thank you. Just for the rest of the notes here. It's my job to help you learn this, and when you're talking, it's not working. You got to take your notes with you because we're not done. Go get your notes and make sure they're correct. Thank you. Okay, peat moss over peat moss and perlite over perlite. So let's set these up. If I do peat moss over peat moss, here she has 4 buckets of peat moss to 10 buckets of peat moss. Peat moss over peat moss. When she had 4 buckets of peat moss, she had 3 buckets of perlite. When she had 10 buckets of peat moss, we don't know how much perlite she had. So this is another way to set it up, and it's perfectly acceptable. As long as you're putting things in the right spot, you're going to end up with the same answer. Okay? 7.5 buckets. You have to know how to do it 2 ways on the homework. That's why I'm showing you both these ways. They're going to ask you, did this person set it up right or did this person set it up right? That's why I'm showing you both ways so you can decide. Okay? On a map, the distance between the Red River Gorge and the Pine Bluff is 3.8 centimeters. If the map scale is 1 centimeter equals 25 kilometers, estimate the actual distance between the Red River Gorge and the Pine Bluff. So we actually need kilometers here because the actual distance wouldn't be in centimeters. So I'm going to do centimeters to kilometers. 1 to 25 is the first thing they gave me. Centimeters to kilometers. On the map, how far is it from the Red River to Pine Bluff? 3.8 centimeters to X kilometers. I want to find out actually how many kilometers that is. So when I cross multiply, I get 1x equals 25 times 3.8. And x equals 95 kilometers. Hold on just a second, Parker, before you leave. I don't know if you're going to the bathroom or what. I want to explain a couple things. Yes.
Well, can you just not do it like that? You do it like 3.8 times 25.
You could, except we're doing,
Use a proportion.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But we are doing proportions, so you need to be able to set up a proportion if it asked you to. Okay? Yeah, it didn't say. You're right. It didn't say on that one. All right, come up here and get this worksheet packet, and I'm going to explain a couple things to you, and then the rest of the time is yours.